happiness we feel when love has found us. 'Tis love we get when love we bring. Where love is, there God is. Do you think you might like to take his place? Something keeps him drifting miles and miles away, searching for the songs to play. Just holding hands. If I give my heart to you, you must be sure from the when she learns we are two. If I fell in love with you. Hey everyone, I've been learning the ukulele for the last 5 months or so. Just thought I'd showcase this for you a little bit. Been having a lot of fun with it, and I feel really blessed because I seem to kind of have a knack for it. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Cars and Crafts. In this episode, we're going to tear into the Yamaha Grizzly. The problem with Bella, I'm calling her Bella by the way, she smokes. And we all know how bad that is for your health. So, we're gonna get the head off and send it in. I've got a bunch of goodies here I can show you. We've got head gasket and seals and exhaust gaskets and more gaskets and O-rings, a new piston and a new cylinder, and of course new bolts. So some of you may have seen my other videos where I wanted to turn this into a stunt ATV. My goal is to be able to do a wheelie pretty easy on it. So have some sort of setup back here where I can put my foot and maybe even a little bit of weight to help get the front end off the ground. Look forward to that in a future video. But for now, we're gonna get this torn apart and show you guys how to take the head off, the piston off, and kind of rebuild the top end. Stay right there, this is gonna be fun. We'll turn the petcock off and disconnect the hose. As you can see now, we have pretty good access to the top of the engine. I'm gonna get the airbox and carburetor off. And while we're working on the top of the engine, I noticed I'm going to go ahead and replace the thermostat while we're here. So I'm gonna order one of those, have it coming while we're working. Don't forget to disconnect the battery before we get too far into this. move that cable out of the way. I'm gonna go ahead and take off this front fender, and it's pretty straightforward. I'll be disconnecting all these electrical wires so they can slide through as I pull it off. And on both sides there's screws that hold the fenders to the footwells. By taking that front fender off, I've opened up a lot of room so they can work on the engine. I took the footwell off as well, along with the side cover, so that we can work on this side of the engine. Next, I gotta get that reservoir off, and then the carburetor. Now that we have the carburetor out, I'm going to remove the spark plug, and that'll make it easier to find top dead center. Now I've got the pull string cover off. I took the cover off for the viewfinder. It's just a little cap that comes off with a screwdriver. And there's a mark on the plate inside that lines up with this mark in the grooves. They call it a stationary pointer. And it's pretty easy. You just have to turn the crank until the mark inside there lines up with the stationary pointer on the threads. So now I'm working on the exhaust header. I've taken off this heat shield that goes on this side. Pretty easy. So there's these three on top. There's that one right there. Loosen up the bolt that tightens the muffler, the tailpipe onto the header. So I've just loosened this one up. And there's one on the two on the bottom. Those squares on the bottom there, those are heat shield bolts, and one on the back side right here. And then I've loosened up some of these already on the manifold. The easiest way I've found to get to the hard to reach one on the right side of the engine is coming onto the left side of the engine and sticking a flex head ratcheting wrench on it. Stick your wrench down here and break it loose like that. The rest of these look pretty accessible, so I wouldn't worry too much about them. I've got an extension on this one. There's the socket right there. And there's the wrench. And same thing with that one. I can reach using my extension here. It slides right on. And there we go. Once those are all loose, should be able to slide out. There it goes. Nope, look at that. You just twist it past that breather pipe down there. Push it in and twist it around. And it looks like it's gonna come out. Yep. I'm going to work on this intake housing. In order to get some of these harder to reach bolts, I'm going to take this off and make it easier for me. Loosen that up. And now the rest of these are 5mm. Now once I've got them loose, it should be super easy to zip these off with my drill. I would highly suggest not starting with an impact on these, because Allen bolts almost always want to strip on you. So get as seated as you can in there and do it by hand to get it started. Then you know you're not going to strip it. And then do the rest of the way with your drill, or however you do it. And they call this the Tappet cover. You want to get this off and see if there's clearance between valve stem tips and their respective rocker arm adjusting screws. So let's get that off. There it goes. The valve stem is right there, and the rocker arm adjusting thing is just right above it. So stick a feeler gauge in there and see if there's, in all of them, see if there is a little bit of play. Apparently there must be pretty tight tolerances. I tried to get my feeler gauge in there and it was pretty tight. I went with one of the smaller ones. I'm not sure exactly what the tolerance is. See, I got that one in. I tried rotating the crank one full turn and it just got tighter, so I know I'm in the right spot now. I turned it back. But the easiest way to figure out if you are top dead center on the compression stroke is to grab the rocker and see if there is any movement here. Grab on the bottom and the top, and if it feels like it's moving at all, and I can feel it just barely moving, if you can feel any movement at all, that means there's no pressure on those valves. When I put everything back together, I will go over these and make sure this valve gap is correct. Next, I want to get as much water out of here as possible. This is the water pump down here. There we go. This is the return line. This is the pressure line. Let's get it off from down here instead. Before you remove the water pump, make sure to drain the engine oil or this will happen. Alright, so I'm just wiggling and pulling. Oh, son of a... And now for the thermostat on the right side of the engine. One thing to note on thermostats, there's a hole here, and that's for bubbles to come out. When you put your new thermostat in, make sure that, you want to be in the video? So as I was saying, when you put your new thermostat in, make sure that hole is on top. That way the bubbles can come out. Something interesting I just noticed, you can see the temperature switch sticking through the housing there. You can see the electrical connection up top, and you can see where it pokes through into the housing here. Next I'm going to disconnect this oil line. There's a banjo bolt at the top and a banjo bolt down at the bottom. It's bigger. That one's bigger. 12 millimeter. Now it's a good idea to replace these copper washers, these crush washers. You don't want them to leak in the future, so just buy new ones and then crush them to the right torque setting and they won't leak. There is a bolt holding it onto the block there. 5 millimeter Allen. Now the diagram says there are 17 bolts holding the valve cover on. If you come across a stubborn bolt, like I did on these two, that guy right there, you can actually see how much aluminum oxide is stuck on it. And this guy right here, instead of trying to crank as hard as you can to the left to loosen it, get to the point where it feels like you're getting close to breaking it. Don't go to that point. And then tighten it back in as far as you can. Loosen it back out, tighten it back in, loosen it back out, tighten it back in, loosen it back out. It'll take you several turns, but you'll get it. The binding is caused by a buildup of aluminum oxide within the shaft, not necessarily the threads at the bottom on the cylinder. Drilling out that shaft and tapping the threads on the cylinder, or in my case I'm getting a new cylinder, so do that and you should be good. Clean up the bolt and reinstall it when you're done. I got the valve cover off. I tried to keep all the bolts in their respective holes. These two right here are the same length, the longer ones, and then this one is a little bit shorter. You can see the difference in the distance it has to travel through the valve cover. So those two are the same, that one's a little shorter. And then all these other ones I tried to keep in their respective holes. Don't forget there's two inside the tappet cover there, and 17 total. And I brought it out through this side. If I wanted to go out the other side, I'd have to remove the shifter. So while I have something to hold on to still, I'm going to get the cam gear loose. There's two bolts that hold it on, one on this side and one on this side. So I'm holding it in place with a wrench. You can use a socket. This seems to be working for me. And just get those two bolts loose so that you can get them off later when you don't have something to hold on to. I'm just holding this with my knee so it doesn't move as I crank on this little bolt here. There it goes. Now you gotta get this bolt off so that I can get this case open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm holding the case on 13 volts. Now the stator is in here. The magnetic rotor is also in there, so it doesn't want to come apart because they're attracted to each other. So you just kind of have to wiggle and pull, and off it comes. That gasket tore right there. I get a new one. Now we can undo the chain tensioner. I've loosened the cam gear bolts the rest of the way and they're completely out, and now I can remove the cam gear. There are now 5 bolts left. There's these what look like 12mm hex head bolts. There, 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 and there. And this one leftover Allen head right there. Now, so you don't warp the head, it's always a good idea to do a crisscross pattern as you're loosening. It's kind of the opposite of when you are torquing it down. You want to make sure it all comes loose at once too. A little bit loose. Now we move over to the next one across from it. It doesn't really matter what's next, just as long as what's next is across from this one. Back to this one. Okay. That one's completely loose. Now they all can be brought up with an air ratchet. You can take this chain guide out. There we go. That's what it was. Alright, one of the washers fell out. So there are 2 more bolts. They are shorter and they are facing the opposite direction. So here's one right here, and there's one right there. So I'm gonna get those off and the head should be loose after that. On this nut I'm using 12mm wrench and a bigger one, 14. You stick the 12mm on the bolt, and you stick this on the far end from you. So it looks like that. You're basically gaining leverage because you got 2 wrenches on it now instead of 1. Remember to switch off. Don't loosen this one all the way yet. You gotta loosen the other side up too. Got the same setup here. Now I just gotta finish up the front side and should be ready to pull off. This is why I pulled this apart. It was burning oil like crazy. You can tell how much oil is on there now. Now it's ready for the machine shop. While it's there, I'll have them replace the valve seals. Basically just check it out for me, tell me if there's anything that needs to be done. My machine shop was so quick. Even, you know, it's December 23rd today, 2 days before Christmas, and they got it done for me in record time. I gave it to them on Tuesday and it's Thursday, so awesome. I love it. And I got myself a puller so I can get this off. It's a 35 millimeter flywheel puller. Go ahead and put your bolt in all the way so you don't gum up the threads pushing on it. There it is. Don't lose your woodruff key. One thing I noticed on the back of this one-way gear is a spacer. So you don't want to lose that. It goes on the back side like so. I'm going to go ahead and take off the tensioner guide. Now if I was going to replace the timing chain, I would start by unstaking this nut. So unstake that and then zip off this nut. Pull off this circlip with a pair of clip pliers, and then both of those gears will come off together with the chain, and then that'll allow you to get that chain out from behind there. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up these bolts in a crisscross pattern. And remember, there's 2 Allen bolts on the other side there. You'll have to undo as well. Oh my goodness, I bent my Allen wrench. This little bolt's not cooperating, so I'm gonna cut it off. I don't want to bore you with the particulars. I'm going to spend some time taking things off of this that need to go on the new one. I'm gonna get the new one ready to go with new O-rings here and there. Cleaning the gasket off of there. I'm gonna Go ahead and turn off the camera now and start doing some of that. Now there's a little snap ring inside there. Just gotta pry it out. And we can get this gudgeon pin out. It's pretty tight fit, but it does slip out. You don't have to like press it out. You just have to push real hard. So make a mental note. This 3YF and the indentation right there, that goes towards the back of the vehicle. The reason is because you've got a valve here in the back of the engine for the intake. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Remember to click like and subscribe and the notification bell. And remember to stay tuned for episode 2 where we put everything back together and get it all running again. My kids have helped me with a special paint scheme and stickers to go with it. So stay tuned. My kids have helped me with a special paint